Well, hello everyone. Um, Doing this video as a kind of a, I don't know if I would want to call it a biopic or not, but I've been getting a lot of questions lately over on Instagram and YouTube, basically asking me when and where it all started. Me and my journey as a bass player. And yeah, I have to admit, looking back over the years, it's been one hell of a ride. It's been one hell of a journey. Um, Initially, I started teaching myself the fundamentals of bass guitar, back in 1977. Now, here's the story behind that. I was an extremely shy, meek, and timid kid back in the 70s. I was 14 years old in 1977. And that was back in the days where you could go to a house party and not worry about any gun violence or anything like that. Not like it is today. Um, and you went to house parties, have fun, and everything, but you noticed that there was always 3 or 4 people that did nothing but hold up the wall all night, guilty as charged on all counts. Like I said, I was extremely shy. Um, didn't know how to dance. I still don't know how to dance. So, late 1976, I made the decision as a 13-year-old, like if I can't dance, because back then I was extremely uncoordinated, and to a large degree I still am now in my 60s. It's like I came up with the thought process of, if I can't dance, I could make people dance, because as far back as I can remember, I've always loved music. And not just any one particular style of music, all styles of music. If it sounded good to me, I was all over it. So, at the age of 14, just early into 1977, I had an old acoustic guitar that I had gotten when I was like 5 or 6 years old for Christmas. So I popped the high E and the high B string off of that thing, reshaped the bridge and the nut using pretty much nothing but popsicle sticks, and I constructed a crude version of what would be now known as piccolo bass. I don't even think piccolo bass was out back then. I seem to remember Stanley Clarke on an American Bandstand show one Saturday morning, where he was playing what I thought was a piccolo bass, and it wasn't. It was what we know as a tenor bass, which is tuned A, D, G, and C. And oddly enough, one of the funkiest episodes of American Bandstand I saw at that time was Stanley Clarke, and that pretty much cemented my ideals about playing bass, because he was going nuts on that thing. And oddly enough, Stanley Clarke is not one of my heroes. As I've said in other videos, I'm not one to play guitar on bass. While yes, I can chord, I can do limited amounts of two-hand tapping. It's not my thing. I saw a video on TikTok late last night where a lady was talking about how bass players have a tendency to overplay everything. And quite honestly, I'm not that guy. I mean, when I first started out, that's what I used to do, because I wanted everybody to know I could play bass. And then at some point, I think it was probably 1984 or maybe 85, I finally realized that, hey, you need to lock in with a drummer. Now, nobody told me this. I just figured it out on my own. It's like your one half, or if you have percussionists in the band, 1/3 of the rhythm section. The idea is to keep the pocket and make it groove. So, 1983, I finally got my first real bass, a bass that I still have to this day. In fact, it's one of 3 that I bought back in the 80s or early 90s that I still own, and one of which, my Broadneck 5-string, I still play to this day. Great bass. Not much for bright tones, but with a little bit of an outboard preamp influence, I can make it just a little bit brighter than what it actually is. It's a pretty dark tone bass. But yeah, 1977 was when I first started teaching myself bass. I always joke when I say this, it was like I started in 1977, bought my first real bass in 1983. The notes finally came in 1985, and that was about the same time I joined my first band, which was I guess for lack of better words, a progressive jazz fusion type band. We had different elements of the band. It was a trio. We had a guitarist that was that was pretty much blues based, heavy metal drummer, or what was known as, I guess back then, a hard rock drummer. There was no such thing as heavy metal. I don't even know when heavy metal became a thing, but yeah. And then me, with this kind of a jazz slap bass influence. And at about that same time, there was a guy out there that I heard, just by happenstance on the radio. And he became a huge influence for me as far as slap bass goes. I mean, yeah, you could talk about guys like Larry Graham or Louis Johnson, and to me, they all kind of sounded the same. But Larry, he was one that, like me, would use effects pedals on his bass. But they weren't my biggest influences. While I loved listening to their music, I didn't aspire to play like them. No, it was Level 42's Mark King that did it for me. I was up in Canada. I was in the military at the time, and I was up in Canada, and I got hold of, among other things, the Physical Presence Live album. And boy, talk about some bass playing. Holy mackerel. Mark was going off on that damn thing. So at that point, yeah, I became, interested in slap basses. As a matter of fact, from 85 all the way up until 1999, if the song didn't have slap bass in it, I didn't want to hear it. So I kind of had a tendency to lean more towards instrumental music, instrumental rock, but in particular jazz. And, I played like that, mostly slap. I couldn't hear a song that didn't have at least a little bit of slap bass in it. It was a really weird time for me because, there was a lot of great music out there, music that I'm hearing now, some of which for the first time. And I'm like, well, how did these guys get by me? Bands like, what's a good example? Bands like Toad the Wet Sprocket. Now, I never really thought much of them in the 80s or anything like that, but the band that I play with now, we currently do one of their songs. Great song. One day I had a chance to sit back and, really listen to it, not here recently, but over the last couple of years, because that's how long we've been playing this song. Fall Down was the song, by the way. And yeah, I mean, great musicianship, um, great lyrics. I don't know how in the world those guys slipped by me. Another band that I'd never really paid much attention to back then, that I listen to quite frequently now, is Depeche Mode. You know, and it was at that point, what, about 10 years ago when I started listening to all this stuff, it was at that point that I realized that, you know, the 80s had a lot of great music in it. I mean, it was like, holy mackerel. Eyes were opened. You know, I got asked this question once a few years ago. And it said, hey, when do you think was the best decades for music? Any and all genres. And like, well, I said, you know, from a musician standpoint, I'd have to say it was probably the last maybe 5 or 6 years of the 60s, all of the 70s, all of the 80s, and maybe the first 3 or 4 years of the 90s. Because, you know, in the late 90s, I mean, you know, I started noticing, with the exception of rock, and maybe country, everything was starting to sound the same. I mean, oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, you know, everything was starting to sound alike, and then you introduced the computer into things and auto tune. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm an old school musician. I'll pick up a guitar or bass guitar or even my upright basses, and I'll play them. You know, I try to influence a lot of the young people, and sometimes it works, sometimes they get it, but it's mostly, you know, kids in the rock genre and or country genre that get it, that get what I'm saying when I say, you know, be creative. Here in recent years, well, actually, it's probably about 20 years ago when I first hit the scene here in Nebraska. Jesus Christ, I can't believe it's been that long. But yeah, 20 years ago, or roughly 20 years ago, I hit the scene here in Nebraska. Now, at that time, everybody here in my city of Omaha knew who I was, but they had no idea, none whatsoever, that I was a musician. Because, you know, again, you know, back in the 70s and, you know, and 80s, the early 80s, and while I was in high school, you know, I pretty much sat on the couch and played. You know, I never played live before 1985. Never played live at all. Again, too shy. But yeah, it came back out on the scene, or came out on the scene. Nobody knew that I was a musician, and almost immediately I made an impact. Now I'm well known throughout the city, but I'm known for being kind of a reckless rebel, I guess, so to speak, because, you know, as stated in a video before, previous video, I'm not afraid to test any and all genres. I'm that one that can't, you know, the assumption around here is, you know, you're a black guy, you should be playing R&B and jazz. Yeah, well, I can do that. I can play R&B and jazz just as well as anybody. And the funny thing about it is most of the times I'll use a pick playing jazz, which really throws people off. But see, here's the thing though. I'm also not afraid to put a 10-gallon hat on my 5-gallon head and play some country music. And I'm also not afraid to step on a distortion pedal and get just completely ratty with some heavy metal. I mean, it's all music to me. You know, I mean, I've never, you know, stayed in any one lane because I believe that, you know, you shouldn't be typecast as any one or two genre type of musician. Just be a musician. Don't be a jazz player. Don't be a blues player, a country player. Don't be a funk, R&B, and any other genre you can think of. just be a musician. Be able to tackle a little bit of everything because you just never know. And here's the other thing too: play for the audience. Don't play what you want to play. That's a problem that I see a lot of newer bands coming up now. Yeah, it's like they always want to play one specific type of genre. Like there's a young man who, when I worked for the school board, he was a 5 or 6 instrument playing kid, and the guy's a genius. But all he wants to do is a specific style of music. I'm not going to mention what style that music is because it'll probably give it away. But one specific style, and I told him, I was like, look, dude, you got to be able to play a little bit of everything. You got to be able to play a little bit of everything, not just one genre. Don't be a 1, 2, or maybe even a 3-trick pony, because you never know. While everybody likes the artist that you're trying to cover, they don't want to sit through a whole night of that particular artist unless you're doing a tribute band. Then it's okay. If you're doing a tribute band, fine and dandy, do your thing. But if you're looking to be, a type of band that plays a little bit of everything, then play a little bit of everything. Don't just limit yourself to any one particular style. And that's how I've patterned my career. I mean, the phone doesn't ring much now because I'm a lot older than I used to be. But, anybody could call me up and ask, hey, can you cover our bass player for this particular night? If I've got time to do it and enough time to learn the material, yeah, sure. Just got a call the other day. And, there's nothing set in stone with this, but I just got a call the other day for being a bassist while another one goes on vacation in a blues band. Now, this particular blues band I played in before about 20 years ago, and they kind of did me dirty, and, it caused me to say, hey, look, I know my self-worth. I know I can play. I don't really have a whole lot of time to practice this stuff, but I'm one of those types too. I can pretty much play music on the fly if I've heard it before. Sometimes I'll get calls, mostly for rock genre. And I guess everybody sees me as doing that because I can play with a pick. And I'm like, look, I don't do, rock music with a pick all the time. I don't play with a pick all the time. It's just, every now and then I'll do it. Every now and then I'll use a pick, and I usually use a pick, like I said, on slower jazz, R&B, stuff like that. Sometimes I'll use a pick on faster songs. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where I just, like I said, I just practice any and all genres. Now, later on today, because it's only 7 o'clock in the morning here where I'm at, so I'm not going to plug in anything until a little bit later on as far as, the jam series goes. I'm on my 3rd year of doing what I call now collectively the Weekend Couch Jam. And I'm realizing that I know a lot more music than I even gave myself credit for. It's like, holy mackerel. I could probably play at the drop of a hat in any genre, any one of 10,000 songs, I guess. And like I said, it's been quite the ride these last now almost 50 years. Next year, 2027, will be my 50th anniversary as a bass player. 50 years. Jesus, I can't even wrap my mind around that number. You do something for that long. That's crazy. But yeah, 50 years I've been doing this. Well, I might as well go on ahead and call it, because it was in the winter of or at the beginning of 1977, like January or February of 1977, when I embarked on this journey. Been a long time. Most people don't even live 50 years. And here I've been doing, practicing a craft for that long. Wow. That boggles my mind just thinking about it. But and in teaching myself bass, I've learned a lot of different things with basses too. I mean, for example, I started out on a 4-string bass, of course, because there was no such thing as a 5 or 6 or even a 7-string bass back in the 80s. No, or at least not until the late 80s, mid to late 80s, I suppose. 5-string bass came into play. Thanks to one of my heroes, Anthony Jackson, who was the inventor of the 6-string bass. But I learned 4-string, 5-string, gravitated over to 6-string back in 2001. Then I had to take a step back to 5-string because 6-string was a little bit of a challenge, but I think it's safe to say I met that challenge pretty well. And here recently, like around 2019, I got a hold of my first 7-string. And I do a lot of different things with that as well. But mostly I'm a 5-stringer for the most part. I do extended range basses for maybe 3 or 4 different songs. Not that I can't play all of them on those extended range basses. I just choose not to. Upright bass, learned that one over the last, I would say probably close to 20 years. And I'm still learning on my 5-string upright because, I'm used to playing a 4-string upright and, having a 5th string on that thing, and especially with it being fretless, is a little bit of a challenge. But, I keep learning. Even at 62 years old, I'm still learning things, learning new things. I don't, that's the key thing with music. Don't stop learning. Challenge yourself. Do different things. Keep it going. Miles Davis said it best. If you want to be relevant and stay relevant in music, you got to be all about change. You've got to change everything up. Most people could not have ever imagined me, a left-handed bass player, playing an upright bass. But I do that just as well as I can on bass guitar. And it strikes people as really strange that I'm, that diverse and that versatile. And then at the same time, it shouldn't strike them as kind of amazing, I guess. Like I said, I play to the audience. I learned a long time ago to play to the audience. If some drunk in a bar one night screams play some country, I'll play it. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. Don't, like I said, don't limit yourself to any one genre. Keep it rolling. Keep it moving. And keep the audiences satisfied. Because I found out a long time ago, on the live music scene, as long as you keep butts out of seats and on dance floors, keep them sweaty and hot, keep them thirsty, you accomplish 2 things. You keep the bartenders and the bar staff pissed off because they're so busy, and you also keep that bar owner wringing his hands because he's looking at all the cash rolling in. That's how you want to do it. That's how you keep the phone ringing. But you got to satisfy the customer. Music is kind of a customer service based industry, and it is so fickle. I mean, the band that I'm currently playing with, we released an album back in 2014, and there was 2 songs in particular that I thought were going to be huge on that album. One song in particular, actually, there was one in particular I thought was going to be huge. And oddly enough, we wrote that song in probably about 7 to 10 minutes. Put it all together, the composition, The band leader had already written lyrics to the song, and all she needed really was, the right bass line and the right drum fills to, bring that song to life. So on the album, that was song number 5, but it was song number 4 that was The Runaway. Everybody loved that song, and oddly enough, it was the only song on that entire album that I played slap bass on. So that was a kind of a pleasant surprise. That thing stayed on Reverb Nation's top 5 charts for close to a year, and it was number 1 for 5 months. Okay, cool. I like it. Let's do it. But anyway, yeah, that's the story. That's the story. Lot of years playing, a lot of different genres, and and I never stopped and or settled for saying, all right, well, I've learned everything I can learn. And they're like, no, there's always something to learn. There's always something to explore. There's always something to discover. So I guess I'll bring this one to a close. I've probably talked everybody's ear off and post this. And like I said, I'll probably post 2, maybe 3 songs a little bit later after, everybody's up and gone. I don't want to wake my neighbors. They're kind of late starters. And when I say late, I mean late in the morning. They're kind of late starters on their jobs. So I'm not particularly interested in waking anybody up because I play loud. Or at least at home I do anyway. Live on stage, not so much. But at home, yeah, I play loud. So they can hear me from 2 houses away. So anyway, that's it for now. So I hope that answers everybody's question on my backstory and how long I've been doing this, because I get asked that a lot. Like I said, I'll be posting some stuff later. In fact, one of the songs, I'm going to do a funky slap bass version of Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf. I've already got that one in the plan. And maybe some Brothers Johnson. I'm not exactly sure on that one yet, but we'll see how it happens. So stay tuned. Talk to y'all later.